This is Sam Renault. I'm joined by Mary Sirico, who is the head of talent and a strategic HR partner at Octagon. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here.
So we are going to be discussing applying for a job. This is focusing primarily on college students, grad students, and some high school students who are looking for internships and entry-level positions. So Mary, before we jump in, could you tell me a little bit more about your role at Octagon and why you are such a good person to learn from here?
Sure. So I've been at Octagon for about 7 years. I started my career out in marketing and then had another position within the HR space and realized pretty quickly that I love both of those worlds. So doing HR for a marketing firm was very high on my list and it really dovetailed my interests nicely. But when I started at Octagon, my entire role was to hire entry level talent. And I realized that there were these awesome jobs out there. We've got the Octagon trainee program, which is a lot of travel and learning new experiences. And I had no idea about them. I'd gone to college 30 minutes from Octagon and had no clue that anything like this existed. So it really became a passion point for me to start to help students really be able to find jobs and then do a good job of applying to them and nurturing them through those really hard steps, but being an HR person who stops and slows down and explains, hey, here's what you should do next. Try this next time. Actually trying to get some feedback across after an interview. Things like that have been very important to me in my career. So as I've grown at Octagon, I've really tried to hold on for dear life to getting to still work with some of that entry level talent. And it is definitely the highlight of what I do.
So I know you do a lot in your role. You focus a whole lot on team culture and sort of employee well-being as well. I mean, your talent and you're working with HR because the fit is really important too. So it's hard enough to find jobs, period, worth applying to, I think, especially now. It's even harder to find one and know that it's going to be the right job for you, which is really critical. So what do you suggest as I'm starting out this process of actually applying? Like, what am I looking for in the job description that's going to tell me not only a good experience fit, but also a good culture fit here?
Sure. So my first thing is that you should not be looking to be a fit anywhere. You should be looking to be an ad places. So you want to be a culture ad, not a culture fit. If you're a culture fit, you're going to come in and you're likely going to just generate the same ideas that are already being produced at that company. You want to be able to fill gaps where they may not have someone. So sometimes just looking at a company's roster on LinkedIn will show you, here's who they have, here's what they've done. Okay, but they don't have anyone who really, if it's the creative department, let's say, they don't have anyone that's really focused on, just graphic design. They've built out this awesome creative department, and sure, there's some graphic design experience throughout, but they could really use an in-house graphic designer. So I am going to pitch that. I am going to apply to other creative jobs, but share with them my add to this team is not only that I have an understanding of creative, but that I have a really strong background in graphic design. And then culture add, again, you're going to want to look at who is there, what they do, what backgrounds. There's no one here from the college I went to. That can be a good thing. If I hire the same 10 kids from the same school, they're going to come to work every day with the same 10 ideas. They've been taught to think the exact same way. That's not helpful to growing business, to creating an inclusive environment, to anything. So you want to think about how are you different from what's there and then what you'll bring to the table. And that's what you're going to want to share during your interviews. But all of that aside, when you're looking for a job, companies spend a lot of time and money putting their career pages together. Those are not just thrown up on a website. It is months of work. They are constantly edited. They are put in order of what they want you to see, what they think is most important. So truly use those career pages. Don't just scroll by looking for the jobs tab. I know a lot of people just want to click right in and get to what the open positions are, but it can be really important to stop and look at what other content is available to you. So even as something as simple as watching, they're often called culture videos or the first video up top, it's there to give you a look at the office. It's curated to show you this is what a day in the life is like. It's curated for you to be able to see this is what the work is like. Also, we answer a lot of questions on career pages. So when we're creating a career page, we think to ourselves, what are the most frequently asked questions? How do we answer them ahead of the application so that people are appropriately applying to the correct jobs? So again, make sure you're reading through, because when I get an application, someone's asking questions that were clearly laid out pre-application, that can be a source of frustration. But also, if I don't have time to answer that, I might skip over your application for that moment so that I can come back later when I have more time. I don't know if that time's going to exist. So you may have just lost your opportunity to move forward in the environment. But I know that could seem really unfair, but you have to remember that when someone's hiring for a job, when the recruiters are hiring for jobs, they're moving as quickly as they can based on the number of candidates they have. So, especially for entry level positions, we see thousands of applicants for one position. So, something as simple as skipping over steps or not providing the information we ask for up front, that can really discount your application. So, use the career sites, definitely look through them, learn from them. Glassdoor is hit or miss. So you have to remember Glassdoor is just like Yelp. People leave reviews when they have had mostly bad experiences. That's where you go to complain. Or you have had an awesome experience. So if you go to a restaurant, you have a terrible time, you're going to write a review. You go to a restaurant, you've had a great time, you're also probably going to write a review. The average consumer's experience at that restaurant is probably somewhere in the middle of those two things. So it's true, the same is true of Glassdoor. So I would say use it, look at it, but understand that it's people leaving their highs and lows. Very few people go on there to say, I've enjoyed my career, there was career progression, or I enjoyed being in this office, but I transferred to this office and it wasn't that great. You're not going to get those sort of middle lane reviews there. So read through it, but only do so with the understanding that, again, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, or the average experience lies somewhere in the middle. I would say my big tip for everybody, companies can't change the information that is put out on Glassdoor, which is at first glance great for someone who is looking for a job. But sometimes misinformation is published that can be challenging. So, especially, and I speak for anyone working in talent acquisition, any person can go in there and say that we pay X amount of salary for a certain position. Please do not trust those salary gauges on Glassdoor. They are pretty frequently incorrect, or there's no context to go along with them. So, sure, maybe you're an account manager and it says you're making $80,000. Maybe when you left, you were an account manager for 7 years at Octagon. None of that context is there. So then when I share with you, hi, we're hiring for an account manager and the compensation is, call it $60,000. When folks respond back, but I saw on Glassdoor it's 80. That is not relevant. And please don't use it when negotiating your salary. I know that's many steps down the road, but you want to just understand that all the information that's out there that a company is not putting out themselves, there's going to be some gray area to it, and you just want to go into it with an open mind.
That's great advice. Good to know. I know a lot of people who aren't as close to this will recommend you go to Glassdoor to get a pretty good understanding of the ranges. So it's good to know that that's not necessarily gospel. So this won't change much. If you're an entry-level applicant, somebody coming fresh out of college, it's going to be pretty clear which jobs you're qualified for from an experience standpoint. But as you're looking through these, I think there's some element of sort of decoding the job description that can trip people up. I know, let's say I'm a little bit past entry level, or I've got a couple of years. Can you talk a little bit about sort of like corporate structure and hierarchy, what I'm qualified for and how I know? And then if there's somebody, let's say the job description says you'll be reporting to the director of so-and-so. How do I know how high up the chain the director is and kind of where I stand in that food chain?
That's a great question. So the first piece of information I will share is that there are few things more confusing than this whole titles, what level should I apply to? And companies certainly try to make it easier with the job description, but if you open up our career site and there's 20 job descriptions, you might feel a little overwhelmed as to where to start. Also, similar to jean sizes, a size 6 at one company is not size 6 at another company. So you also need to understand that the titles don't translate across the board, and they may mean different things. So one common misconception I'll share, a lot of colleges have started to have account management as a major. So the students graduate from account management and then they go to apply for account manager jobs. At Octagon, that's a job with 5 to 6 years of experience. So the students are applying to the wrong jobs because they see account management from their major and think it's where they're supposed to be. And then they're immediately getting passed over and they're just moving further and further down in the system of resumes we're looking at. There's also account executive is our first full-time positions, full-time permanent positions, I should say. Account executive is a term that is frequently used in sales jobs. We don't really have sales at Octagon. We do experiences, we do strategy. There's some sales element to everything, but it is not, your typical go out and sell this. This is what you're after. So you also see a lot of miscommunication over folks applying for that. the best thing you can do is scroll down to years of experience. You can shoot your shot for sure. If you see a job and you're like, this is for me, apply to it. But what I would say is when you're doing that, try to only go 2 years above or below the number of years of experience they're looking for them to either A, actually consider you, or B, for them to say, okay, maybe this job is not the right fit right now, but could we lower this? Do we need it to be at this level? Or on vice versa, could we raise it? Could this be an account manager if it's a senior account executive? How do we look at this? So as long as you stick to that, you're going to keep yourself more relevant in the search. The other part I would say in regard to figuring out the hierarchy at any company, it's going to be, again, by reading the job descriptions. It's also looking at who hiring managers are. So sometimes on LinkedIn, they're identified right there. But also scroll through the employee page on LinkedIn. So if you click on Octagon and then you click on the employee page, you're going to see all of our employees listed there. It's not in order by any means, but you're at least going to start to see the job titles and familiarize yourself with them. And then by clicking into a couple of profiles, if you keep clicking on account director and you notice that all of them have 6, 7, 8 years of experience, you're going to realize where that falls in the chain. It's a bit of research that you have to do, but I would say for any company you're really passionate about getting into, do that sort of research. Spend the time, get familiar.
So a company like Octagon, you guys are going to have tons of open positions, ideally, when things are going well in lots of different departments. Let's say I, the college grad, have 4 different positions I've seen at Octagon, and I really love all of them, and I think I do a good job in all of them. Is it a red flag if I apply to 4 different positions at the same time? How do I handle that?
Sure. Apply to 4, go for it. Make sure those 4 are relevant. We have serial offenders who apply to every single position we post. For me, that means you're not reading my job description that we have now spent so much time putting together. You are not being careful with our time and we're going to have to do to now move you out of that requisition to maybe where you belong. That is a red flag for me. If you see 4 positions that are within your relevant range of experience, that's awesome. If you see 10 positions that are in your relevant range of experience, apply to them. Make sure when you're interviewing that you know exactly which position we're talking about. And then also make sure you've done your research on that role. And feel free if at the end, when the interviewer says, do you have any more questions? You can say, yes, I've actually applied to about 4 positions, only if you're speaking with HR at this point. I've applied to about 4 positions. Are there any others you can update me on? Or is this really where you see me being a good fit? So that's a good way to follow up when you've had multiple applications. But feel free to apply for as many as are relevant to your skill set and years of experience.
That's good to know. And now what about, let's say your application process, and I'm not familiar with Octagons, but requires resume and cover letter, and then a link that says any additional documents you'd like to include. How do you recommend people handle that? And let's say it only asks for resume. What's your recommendation there?
Sure. I hate cover letters. I don't read cover letters, but my team does. My team loves them. They think they're wonderful. I have found that there have been times where I've seen a great applicant come in and then a generic offer or a generic cover letter comes in with it. And I'm like, wow, they really didn't spend the time to make this a really strong cover letter. And it takes away from the experience they may have just had. I also think that if you spend the right amount of time working on your resume and putting it together, you've said most of what you need to say right there on the resume. We move through these resumes very quickly. It's less often that we're reading both of them at the same time. So if you are writing a cover letter, what I say is make sure it's not that you should never include them. You should include them, but they should be well done. Do not use like the Microsoft Office cover letter template. Find one that matches your resume. You should always have consistent branding across your own brand. And then make sure that you are including information that's important. Why do you want to work at this company? How long have you been following them? Don't lie about how long you've been following them because there's a lot of technology that's available for me to see. You just started following Octagon 3 weeks ago. If you're new to following that company, hey, I just came across Octagon and wow, what a cool company. I would love to be a part of this. Talk about why you want to be a part of it. Talk about how you connect back to the work. And then also think in terms of 30, 60, and 90 days, what you could immediately apply. So in the job description, I saw that you are really looking to make more efficient systems for event days. Well, in my time as an intern, a game day operations intern, I was in charge of setting up the stanchions, which is something seemingly simple, but very frustrating to do. And I was able to develop a pattern that made sure that we were able to move our guests through registration twice as fast. It's small, but you actually took a detail out of what I'm looking for. And you talked to me about the fact that that's something within the first 60 days, I would be happy to go through, look at all your events and give you my feedback from my past experience on how we can do this a little bit better. Just because you are young doesn't mean you don't have valuable input. There is so much you're learning every day that can be applied. We wouldn't hire at entry level if we didn't need entry level experience. We want to tap into your mind. We want to know what things you've just worked on. So feel free to share them there. As far as other documents to attach, our application system has it as an option. It lives there. If you're looking for a creative position, it's a really good place to include your portfolio. If you're looking for strategy, some strategy folks have portfolios as well. Outside of that, don't load it up because it's just, honestly, it takes longer for me to open your file, which in a world where we're trying to move very quickly through things can be a bit of a challenge. Fill it with what's exactly necessary. If I need work samples from you, I'm happy to come back and ask you for them, but I wouldn't overload on that from the get-go.
Got it. So then I've submitted my application and let's say, I know this will change whether it's a large company versus small company. Some organizations aren't large enough to even have a dedicated HR department. But what's my next step? Am I following up with HR directly as soon as it goes through? Am I following up with the potential supervisor if I was given the job? What do you recommend there?
Sure, you can follow up with either. Again, you just want to make sure that you're being self-aware of sort of how you're reaching out, when you're reaching out, how often you're reaching out. I always say, if you think you're being annoying, if you're going to start your email with, I hope I'm not annoying you, but probably annoying somebody. So take a step back and think about really being smart and ask a direct question, not, did you just receive my resume? Say, I submitted my resume last week. I've thought a lot more about this position. And honestly, I saw this, recent Sports Business Journal article come through that mentioned this work Octagon did this past week that made me feel twice as passionate than I felt even when I was applying last week. I would really love to pick your brain on, what led to this activation, or if you could put me in touch with the team that worked on this, I would love to speak more with them. Small little wins like that are going to be big for you. So really be strategic. Humans love to talk about themselves and companies love to talk about their work. So asking for more information on those two things, not just following up on myself here, can be really helpful in pushing your foot through the door.
Got it. So then final question.
Sure.
Application in your eyes, what's your final piece of recommendation? Anything I haven't asked about that you think students and applicants should really know?
Yeah, I would say something that's super important is it's your resume. And I know that there is going to be 1,000 tips out there for how to build a good resume. The thing I will tell you is that there are also hundreds of thousands of templates out there for resumes on websites like Etsy or Canva. They are cheap. They cost like $6. It is the best $6 you will spend. Even if you take one of them and edit it in small ways to make it feel more your own, or to make sure that somebody else isn't submitting the same exact resume. Resumes come to us that are very creative. They are very well done. They are very professional looking. And by professional, I don't mean that there's no color or the fonts aren't cool. Like professional just means they're well put together. They're well formatted. Just if you're someone who that's not your natural inclination is to make something like that, then use a template. Do not try to sit there and force yourself to create some masterpiece in Microsoft Word that you're going to submit to me. Know what your own limitations are. Take that time, go ahead and find a template for yourself that works and feels authentic to who you are, and use that to submit your application. And then again, you're going to want to stick to those same fonts. You're going to want to stick to those same, all those same branding pieces when you are putting together your cover letter, follow-up emails, things like that. You want someone to remember who you are on a whole scale. And I think that can be very helpful.
Adam, this is all very helpful indeed. We really appreciate the time. Again, Mary Sirico with Octagon. Thanks for your time and wisdom.
Thanks.